good to me.
All right. So let's see. Have you been sworn in before? I'm not sure how much context you need.
For lots of other things, but not for this role before, but yes.
All right. So it should be pretty straightforward. You've done the drill. You repeat after me. And
Okay.
At the end of this, I'm going to email you over your oath for you to electronically sign.
Okay.
And click, click, click. Once you hit sign, the system will give you and me a copy, and then you can keep one, and then I'll keep one. And this part is done, and now you be a voting commissioner, and you're off and running.
Okay, sounds great.
All right,
I'm ready.
Deal. So here we go. So do me a favor and raise your right hand. Thank you, and then repeat after me. I, Art Whipple.
I, Art Whipple.
Do solemnly affirm.
Do solemnly affirm.
That I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
That I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
And the Constitution of the State of California.
And the Constitution of the State of California.
Against all enemies.
Against all enemies.
Foreign and domestic.
Foreign and domestic.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance.
To the Constitution of the United States.
To the Constitution of the United States.
And the Constitution of the State of California.
And the Constitution of the State of California.
That I take this obligation freely.
That I take this obligation freely.
Without any mental reservation.
Without any mental reservation.
Or purpose of evasion.
Or purpose of evasion.
And that I will well and faithfully.
And that I will well and faithfully.
Discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter.
Discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter.
Congratulations, Art.
Okay, I'll watch my email.
And that is it. You're a voting commissioner from here on out.
Okay.
I'll just quickly put in a commercial for the commissioner training at the end of the week.
Yes.
We've been sending out communications on that. If you haven't done so, your ethics training. Great. That's right. I remember that coming through.
Yeah.
I can't think of anything off the top of my head. But
okay.
Godspeed.
Okay. Good. Yes, I think I'm great. Good. Yeah. Anita gave me a good lesson a couple of days ago, so I think I'm off and started well. And so the Form 700 is filed and the ethics training has been done. So I'm.
Wow, you crossed all your I's and dotted all your T's.
Head of the curve here. Good.
Excellent.
Okay.
All right. June, did you say anything to me, or was that addressed to Art?
Oh, no. I just think you asked anything else. I said maybe the Form 700, but he already had it all done. Yeah.
He got it.
Ahead of the games.
He's on top of it for sure.
Good.
I can't think of anything else. I'm going to excuse myself, work on that oath, send it over to you electronically, Art.
Okay.
And aside from that, unless there's any questions, then
Nope.
My piece is done.
Okay. Well, you did a good job, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.
And we'll see you Friday.
Yes. At
All right.
3:30 or whenever it is. Yeah.
Yes.
3 o'clock,
yes.
whatever it is. Yeah.
All right. You guys take care.
See you, Angel. Congratulations, Art. You get to cast your first vote today, I guess.
Yeah, I guess so. Great.
So I think we have a few minutes before.
Yeah, we're a couple minutes early. That was,
That was
people
a
were
quick-
prepared and it went zip, zip, and we're done. That's good.
Maybe June can give us a little background on herself. Where'd you come from? What do you see so far?
I see good things. John
Good
is
things.
a very good leader. Yeah.
Good.
Well, I come from I previously worked for city of San Pablo, and before
Okay.
that I worked for the city of Willits, city of Rio Vista, and city of Vallejo.
Okay.
So yeah, I was the interim fire director for the city of San Pablo before I come over here, and before that I was the fire director for both city of Willits and the city of Rio Vista. Yeah.
So does that
So
mean you have a terrible commute all
I
the
was
way
just
from
thinking the same
out
thing,
there
yeah.
directly?
Yes, I do. I do have a terrible commute, but John is very flexible with me. I'm really glad. You know, I
Good.
come in, I stay home probably like 1 or 2 days, especially Monday and Friday. Those are
Yes.
bad traffic day.
Good.
Yeah. So I come in.
Well,
myself.
I drove past your house twice today. I was up in Colfax, California. I'm building a cabin in outside of Auburn, near
Mm.
Colfax. So went right past you twice today.
Oh yeah, today actually a terrible commute, and then
Yeah.
yesterday was raining.
Yeah.
Last night, I mean, this morning, so many accidents.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, lucky me, I was going east in the morning and west in the evening, so it didn't hurt me very badly.
Yeah, but the one plus thing about COVID has been that, you know, hybrid schedules can work.
Yes.
You know, and as long as you have clear deliverables, I believe it's a very good option all around, right? It's better for the staff, better for the city, better for the environment. So I think the key is to make sure that you have your deliverables done.
Yep.
Exactly.
And I think the hybrid is the key word there, because I think you do need to have some personal interaction. You need to see people face to face from time to time, maybe not every day, but from time to time. It helps to develop a bond and an understanding of where people are going. So I think the hybrid thing is great.
Absolutely. Yes.
Great.
Hey, John. John's muted.
Yeah.
Mute. There we are.
There
How
we
you doing,
are.
Gary?
Good. How are you?
Doing
So
fine.
Art
Welcome,
just got sworn in, and he got his recruiting bonus. How much did you get for coming on this
Oh,
commission?
it was only 50 grand this time.
Oh, geez.
Wow.
Well, that's because no everybody wants to be on it. You know,
Yeah.
I got 100 3 or 4 years ago.
You
so.
guys are so far ahead of me. And as for you, June, welcome.
Oh, thank you. We have a lot of J in the city. Now you add one more. We have John and June and
There you go.
All true.
John and June.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a lot of Johns too.
Hey, Tony.
So as an executive team, we've decided to call each other by second names, because when we say John, we have 3 people look up.
Everybody shows up. Huh?
Yeah. So I'm a ham in addition to doing this, and we do our weekly check-in starting at 7:30 today. So I'm busy, but the thing relative to the same names, we have a Harry, a Gary, and a Terry all side by side in the list as they check in. So we need to be listening carefully to who it is when.
Yeah. You get any distortion on that and you've got a problem.
Yep.
So for Tony and Mark, Art got sworn in. He's got his large bonus check cashing, for signing up.
Yep.
We won't say the amount now. We said it
really.
earlier, and
Yeah, I wish.
you guys missed it. Yeah.
Yeah. I have to tell you, maybe I'm not unusual, but I finally completely retired in August 26th. And I find that I'm busier than I've ever been in my life. I just don't get paid.
Yeah. I've been that way for 20 years. 20 years.
Yeah.
Get hassle, but you don't get money. Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope the chair is not ditching on us. It's just about 6.
And where's Martha? Now, Kuljit we can do without, but Martha we can't.
Oh, that makes it worse.
Because I'm just a little worried about the old link that was. Did you have like a recurring meeting for this, or you just?
Yeah. Somebody's going to have to go in and take down and then send a fresh set of Outlook invitations, I think.
Right. We'll have to get that changed. I think
Yeah,
that
I
was.
use the one you just sent out, obviously.
Yeah, and, I
We could-
concede I was the solitary attendee in John's room for a minute or two before I figured it out.
Yeah,
It was-
that's my worry if they're stuck there. Do any of you have their contact numbers or something?
I don't have it handy. Let's see. I'll look.
Yeah, Wise Mayor's off too.
Jeez. I have an email for Koljit, but not a number.
Yeah. The URL is in the agenda for tonight, which I found on the website fairly easily.
Right, but Art, I think what the problem is that they had an outstanding recurring meeting on
Yep.
Outlook, and that one has John's link, and
Yep.
John is no more the head, so the liaison.
There's Martha.
There's
Hello.
Martha.
Good.
Martha,
Martha
did
can
you go
start
to
the
the old
meeting.
link as well?
I got the link, John, that you had just sent, but
Okay.
I'm now struggling to find my agenda. So, although I know I could start by just seeing if we have everybody here and if we have a quorum.
We have a quorum. The question is Koljit. He's I think the only one missing.
Okay. Do
Yeah, we
we
got the Wise Mayor join.
want to wait for him, or do we want to start
I'd suggest you start with him. Start without
without
him.
him? Okay.
Let him catch up. And for your information, Art was sworn in 10 minutes ago, so he's an official member of the
Very nice.
Okay.
Okay, so should we go ahead and establish quorum?
Sure.
there.
Okay, so Chair Colcutt is not here yet. Commissioner Callback,
Here,
Commissioner Richmond,
Here.
Commissioner Frey,
Here.
Commissioner Claris,
Here.
Commissioner McKelshey,
Here.
and fresh Commissioner Art.
I'm here.
fresh Commissioner Hart. Like that.
Thank you. So we could move on to the minutes, the draft minutes.
We usually, actually, John, we usually also, we do the Pledge of Allegiance
Oh,
as well
yes,
as
I'm
we
sorry.
take public comment or see if there are any members of the public here who would like to comment, give us any items that are not on the agenda. So I will ask if we all will do the Pledge of Allegiance together. Up above me is where our flag is, unless you have one on your own. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Flag.
of the United States of America,
America and to the republic
Republic
for which it
stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty
liberty and justice for all.
for all. Okay, thank you. And now, if there are any members of the public here who would like to speak on anything that is not part of the agenda,
Doesn't look like there's anybody even on
okay,
besides us.
all right. Then, John, I'll let you continue.
So before we move on to our presentation on the purchasing policy, just for the benefit of those who joined late, I would like to introduce June. June is our new finance manager. She joins us after recently coming from the city of San Pablo, and she has worked prior to that in Rio Vista, Vallejo, and the city of Wiltis as well.
Welcome, June.
welcome. Welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, so moving on, we are going to go to review the purchasing policy update, and I'm going to do a slideshow for you for this one. just happened? Okay, there we go. The history of before in 20 the city manager 8 years later, purchase order limits were increased by resolution from 1K to 2K. Moving on to 2015, council had a deliberation on the proposal for 100,000 manager's authority. That was actually approved to be 75,000 in 2015. And then in 2016,
May I interrupt for just a moment? Is anybody else having difficulty with the
Yeah.
audio on?
Yes,
John?
John is dropping in and out.
Okay. If
Oh,
you
I'm
could
sorry.
speak closer to the microphone, John, that might be it.
Good,
Yeah,
thank you, John.
Okay, can you hear me better now?
Yes.
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 Okay. Do you want me to start from the beginning, or did you pick up most of
I think
what-
this is self-explanatory.
Yeah.
Yep.
No.
Not making it.
Yeah, we're not hearing you, John.
Can you hear me now?
Can hear you now.
Yeah.
Okay. So if that breaks up again,
I'm wondering if it's a bandwidth issue.
it should not
If with the video and the audio, it can't take the amount of data stream.
it
Probably
should
right.
not be. Bear with me for 1 minute. Let me something here.
Maybe we get you on the phone for the audio part.
I apologize. Give me a second. I'll just stop sharing and go back to change my camera onto just. Can you hear me well now?
Very
Yes.
well.
Better.
Okay, that's good. So I'm going to go back and share my screen, back to my presentation. And so why are we requesting these changes today? And I'll go into more detail on this. Part of this is going to be best practices. We want to be in line with GFOA best practices. There's a document online. It envisions us having more clarity in the policy, having more ethical guidelines, which we have drafted into the policy. Another reason is inflation. What was worth, like a simple example would be the $50 of petty cash, which was established many, many years ago, doesn't get you that far. And I'll be showing you another slide on where that 75,000 has gone today. Then critically staff time. The usual process is if something needs to get onto the agenda, a couple of staff members will be spending time drafting that agenda report. That report then goes to the city clerk, to the city attorney, to the finance director, the director of that department, as well as the city manager for a review. And then it comes back to council. Now, once it comes to council, it also takes time from council to review those. And a lot of these things have been pre-approved within the budget itself. So it becomes cumbersome for them to have to approve so many things during a meeting. And that's part of the reasons our meetings go along as well. Another big reason in redrafting this policy was clarity in direction. There were confusing paragraphs, as you would have seen in the draft. We've kind of aligned those more closely to what we expect it to be. And there were several errors as well in the policy where either some things were not clear or there were mistakes in grammar, etc. And let me move on to the next slide. So what are today's proposed changes? I'm highlighting some of the major ones which you would have already seen. The Code of Ethics section has been added. We've done an update to reflect the finance department structure versus the admin services structure that was there before. We've proposed an increase in the petty cash limit from $50 to $100. We've also proposed an increase in the city manager's limit from 75K to 100K. We've done a lot of error corrections, and we've added a little bit to the shared cost addition. So shared costs are mostly what we pay CalPERS every year, or things that we pay to insurance, utilities. We don't really go to council for each and every of those invoices because they are ingrained in the budget. So to that section, we've also added annual software maintenance costs that are routine. For example, a whole Microsoft suite may cost you 120,000 odd a year, and it's a one-time deal. You don't want to change that system unless you go out again. So those kind of payments would be under the city manager's purview. And then the big one is legal fees. So now with legal fees, the prior direction was everything went to council. It was cumbersome in terms of everything became public information, right? So if it's a settlement or whatever it is, it's not because there's a need to be less transparent, but it's more of a need to not show your hand out to outside lawyers or outside legal counsel that can then see what those settlements were or how much is being paid, and then they can use that as a bargaining tool for other cases. So part of that reason, the code also allows the city attorney to have outside counsel. And the proposal here is that as long as those costs are within the appropriated budget, they could be paid by the city manager and reported to council in closed session. Finally, the public works projects.
Can we stop on legal for a sec, John?
Sure.
So is the annual budgeted appropriation the entire pot, or is it the budget for the case?
It's the budget for that entire pot.
Yeah, so I'm a no on this.
I am too.
I am too. I agree.
Sorry to stop you cold, but put a $3 million pot or whatever this is going to be, and you settle two of them cheap, and then you have the money that can be reappropriated.
Yeah.
This is an area of enormous sensitivity by this commission. I don't mean to speak for the others. They can all speak for themselves, but just to give you a pot and say, please spend within that pot, have at it, given the percentage of the budget you're asking to put in the pot, I think I'm not comfortable with that.
Yeah,
that's understandable. We could put in a recommendation that you have in terms of if it's by case, but I don't have too much of history here. Maybe the wise mayor can help me whether we actually budget by each case or that part, what derives that part.
If I could say something, I would even go one step further, and I'd like to see an estimate to complete per case where they do estimates and we can see what those estimates are. I think Tony's point is very good, that just having a general pot for that is just not acceptable.
Yeah, let me add to those two. Our problems, John, in the past, the Financial Commission problems have been a sense of a lack of responsibility, sorry, Anita, on the council's part of creating multi-million-dollar obligations, and in our mind, not being sensitive to creating very, very large legal bills compared to everybody else.
Okay, I'll bring those to the attention of the city manager, and we'll obviously have a discussion at the end of this that would come about.
Since we're also talking about legal fees, on page 4, second paragraph, I'll read it, and if you could explain it to me, because I'm a little unclear. It says the city attorney does not have financial authority, but is responsible for legal review of purchase orders, blanket purchase orders, purchasing agreements, or contract purchase orders, and all other professional services as defined by this document. Are you saying that we want outside legal counsel to look at every purchase order, like if somebody's going to purchase pencils?
Oh, no, that is not the intent. The intent or clarity that the city manager wanted to bring here was that the city attorney is not an employee of the city, so
Okay.
doesn't have authority to approve. The approval authority would be with the rest of the table. So the city attorney will only be looking at the legal side of every agreement.
But that's my question. Is the city attorney going to look at each? Basically, the question is why do we have a purchasing manager if we want the attorney to look at small dollar purchase orders? I don't know of any company out there where you get into legal under $1 million. And correct me if I'm wrong, Tony, because I know you're in the legal field. It seems to me that this is just going to invite more legal fees if we have the city attorney looking at each individual purchase order as opposed to some sort of threshold.
So let me get this. John, is that what you're implying? I thought it was just for legal activities, not for
I don't
general
know.
purchasing.
That's why I read this to
It
me.
doesn't, you're right, it doesn't say that, but I think what John was implying was that it was only for legal fees.
Correct.
And we should say that.
Yes.
And we
I
can
agree.
we can clarify that.
Yes, we should say that, because when I read this, and do we do legal fees with purchase orders? And
Not necessarily. The reason was in a broader sense, the city attorney would be looking at the purchase orders and other orders, even if it's an ordinary purchase that was above the 75,000 threshold.
Well, then we need to say that, because what I'm fearful of is purchase orders, correct me if I'm wrong, are covered under the Uniform Commercial Code. We have a purchasing manager, I believe we have a purchasing agent, who should be able to have a certain amount of latitude to purchase copy paper and all that, and not have expensive legal review for every individual order, especially below a certain threshold.
Yes, and we can certainly bring that clarity in. We do not have a centralized purchasing manager in the city. It's mostly decentralized, but we only have a review of, the city attorney would only review above 75,000. So I can bring that.
And we need to say that, and we also need to say that the attorney is going to review all major SOWs, because that's not said in that paragraph either. And that's the area where we'll get in the most trouble, is the major RFPs and SOWs. So that was my concern on that. How do you guys want to go through this? Do you want to go through line by line? Because I have a lot of questions on this thing.
I think we're guilty of hijacking John's presentation. So I think,
Okay.
I think we ought to give it back to him before
Very good.
we weigh in on this other stuff. And I apologize for being the first of the hijackers. So
No,
I'll
I'm
shut up
a
for a bit.
guilty hijacker too, Tony.
Thank you, John. Please continue.
Yeah, no problem. I just wanted to kind of run through the presentation, and then we do have a Q&A, and we can go through the policy line by line. So finally, we also talk about public works projects, and we plan to implement this in the future. It's not going to be adopted now because it is a pretty complex code. We have to follow the government code on this, and we would have a completely different presentation. So in this policy, we have mentioned, should council adopt using this, then we would present it separately. Then, are you still seeing, which screen of mine can you see now, right now? Because I'm on my laptop and.
So today's proposed changes.
Oh, you're still on today's proposed changes. Okay. So let me see how I can get that. Because I disconnected everything and now I'm somewhere else. Okay. I'm going to try to stop sharing my screen first. I didn't anticipate having these problems today.
The screen sharing went away.
Yeah, so I'm
John,
going
do
to share my.
you want me to take over the PowerPoint so you can just explain it? I can share mine. If you have,
You can see it now, right?
Yes.
Yes.
yeah, we can see. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm just going to leave it in this format. And then down here, I'm showing what happens to, what inflation has done to us, right? You see a 75,000 in 2016 that was worth 75K is now close to 85,000, just with inflation of around 17% from the Bay Area Consumer Price Index. And then we are talking about the recommended action. This is basically where you could now provide your feedback on the policy and additional considerations, and what do we want to take to council as the finance committee. And with that, I can bring on the finance committee. I can bring on the policy itself, and we can start taking questions from there. So anyone would like to go first on what we want to go over?
You want to pull up the policy?
Page by page.
And you can see the policy now, correct?
No.
Not
No.
yet.
Recommended actions.
Okay, so let me stop that screen share and start again. It looks like I have to share each document this time. And you see the document now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so you want us to go all the way to page 1, or is there a section that we want to look at first?
Well, page 4, if you're gonna go.
Page 4 is full of lots of interesting stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so here we are on page 4.
Okay, so I'll start with city attorney does not have financial authority, but is responsible for the legal review. The legal review is different than the financial review of purchase orders, right? So
Correct.
he technically doesn't care if it's a dollar or $1 million, as long as it's in the right format. I mean, the implication earlier was that the city attorney is going to review all the documents for compliance with the budget or some other base. I just want to make sure that's clear. I think it's clear the way it says this.
Well, the way it's written, the city attorney is going to review every purchase order. Do we want to recommend that to council?
From a legal, well, that was part of my, the question. Is it just a legal review on format, or is it fitting into the budget as an approval?
So just to clarify, as a process in Los Altos, anything that goes to council, the agenda that goes to council, whether it's a purchase of any kind of purchase that's above the threshold, needs to be reviewed by the city attorney, the finance director, as well as the city manager. So the intent here was that anything that is going to council based on the table below, which has the limits, she would only review those. And the clarity to here was that in the past policy, it was that she would approve, but we feel that she, not being a staff of the city, it would be appropriate that she reviews rather than approve.
Yeah, I think, okay. I think
and we
that's
can
right.
clarify that language.
The
I think
second part of the question.
dollar
Go
limit
ahead.
as well.
Yeah.
Because
Yes.
I mean, when I get my attorney bills for my corporation, I got a bill yesterday for dialing the number, and it was $90 just to dial my number. So if you're going to have an attorney look over this, you're going to add probably $500 to $1,000 per PO, and we're fighting high legal fees. So that, I think that paragraph needs to be revisited.
Okay, that's good feedback.
Let's see if I could on page 4, second paragraph from the bottom. It says the physical receiving of tangible goods shall be approved by the authorizing department at the time of delivery. Dual approval is required and retention of packing slips mandatory. Who's part of the dual approval? We need to define that.
Okay. I got that.
Can we move on to page 5?
This is page 5.
Mm-hmm.
You are seeing page 5, correct?
Mhm.
Correct.
Maybe somebody ought to yell out the next page they want to look at rather than.
My next page is 7.
So we have a comment on page 5?
No.
No,
Oh, okay. So I'll move on to page 7, which you mentioned. Okay.
Let's see, the 3rd paragraph down, the risk manager's approval required for initiation of a PCA and annual thereafter if the scope of the cost initial agreement is modified. Do you want the risk manager, like for example, do we want them involved at a certain threshold, or do we want them involved with every PCA or on that? And I just wanted to understand the logic of that.
So these are usually established once a year, right? And they could entail, if you're going with the same vendor, it could entail certain amounts, you know, of risk. So it's a good practice. I wouldn't say that it is going to add a lot of benefit, but.
Well, what I'm asking is, do you want to make it for a dollar threshold, or do you want to make it for any change?
That's a good point. We could think about.
If they change the date on something, the vendor comes back to you and says, you know, I'm going to be 3 days late.
Right.
Does that require the risk manager's approval?
No, I wouldn't think so.
Well, then we should put some sort of threshold.
Okay, so threshold for PCA, that can be done. Any other comment on this page?
No.
not for me.
Yep.
Which page would we like to visit next, or you just want me to scroll through?
I'm good until we get to 9.
Okay, so we are at 9.
Okay, on 9, it would be 3rd paragraph from the bottom. The person requesting the purchase, now this is for a sole source procurement. My company does a lot of government type contracting, and there usually has to be some pretty substantial approvals for that to make the government happy. And it says the person requesting the purchase is to prepare a written correspondence justifying and describing the reason for sole source purchase. This documentation must be submitted to the finance along with the requesting approval. Shouldn't this say the department head should decide that, whoever it is, as opposed to any person? And shouldn't the risk manager be involved? Because sole source procurements are ones that can really get you in trouble.
That is true, and these would apply to the dollar limits, right? That we have. We are talking about all of this in relation to dollar limits that would be on the table.
That's fine. Then just
Below.
say that. Then say
Yeah.
that for sole source procurement, over this amount of dollars, then this applies.
So it's on page 9, so we can have that clarity.
Or add that sole source procurement to the table in page 5, for example.
Okay, I get what you're looking at, and I can put that in a way that would make more sense.
We just want a
Yeah.
clarification.
I get that.
And since I'm the major troublemaker tonight, my next complaint's on page 16.
Anyone else between 9 and 16?
Not for me.
Okay, so we are on to 16.
Okay, page 16, it is 1, 2, 3, third paragraph from the bottom. We kind of touched on this with the city attorney estimates. I'd like to see categories, whether it's a senior attorney, a legal aid person, something like that, so we have some feeling for what the budget for the attorney's fees are. And I would love to see an estimate to complete. What I've seen major corporations do is the attorneys usually come up with, we think that this case is going to cost X amount, legal fees and settlement. And that's what we touched on at the beginning.
Right, and Commissioner, I wouldn't disagree to that, but in terms of the purchasing policy, right, that would be more in terms of the budget development, I would think.
It's fine. It's just, it's in here. So if it's in here, we need to discuss it.
Right, so that's where, in here, what we are trying to say is that these estimates would be made at the time of the budget, and then the city manager would have the authority to pay up to those amounts that were budgeted.
Correct. I hear what you're saying. I would like to see some discussion though of estimates to complete or categorical billing, so that, you know, it becomes clearer, so we have some sort of visibility of what all these costs are running the city.
So I think this is in an earlier conversation I had at the end of last week with Anita. This is Art. The issue is that pretty much all of this conversation and all of this information apparently is public under Brown Act. So I think one of the reasons they don't want to do this is that if the city attorney has a close to the vest understanding of what they're spending, then it doesn't have to be publicly announced. But if it's given to the Finance Commission, then that's available to plaintiffs' attorneys.
That's an interesting paradox. That's a fascinating paradox, because I hear what you're saying, that on one side, we can't get into the details, because if we get into the details, someone can use it against us.
Right.
That's a fascinating paradox.
And we've been through that over the last several years at the Financial Commission, where we have acquiesced. We've all said we really want to see what it's going to cost, and we really can't. In fact, we had asked, I think Kuljit asked if he could go in at least as chair of the commission and look, and the answer was no. It violates the Brown Act. If Anita's on the line.
Who defines that it violates the Brown Act?
Who defines?
Yeah, is it the city attorney?
Part of the, no.
If it violates the Brown Act? Because I guess my question is we really need to investigate this if that indeed is violating the Brown Act to get that level of data. I mean, the city should have some data that's.
It doesn't violate the Brown Act, but by Brown Act, it's mandatorily public information.
Right. The violation would be if we see
not disclosing
it.
Yeah, then you're violating the Brown Act.
All right.
So you really have to put it almost in writing on the website. Guess what? This is going to cost us $5 million, we think. And then the attorneys have a field day with that, is the theory.
No, I definitely see your point. I see the paradox, and I appreciate the education, because I hadn't looked at it from a Brown Act standpoint.
Yeah, and we've been around this pony before years ago, over the last couple of years.
I appreciate the education, Gary.
Well, and I think it's a big deal, because this is obviously a huge chunk of the budget that is discretionary by city staff. Right. And you would think this would be one of the places where we'd want to have some oversight, but it sounds like we need to be talking to Anita or other people or other Brown Act experts to figure out how we could do this and not get in trouble.
Yeah,
I agree. We should, in fact, we should probably hire a consultant to can answer that question, because it's highly desirable, because I mean, attorney fees are becoming a huge portion of our budget.
Yep.
Yeah, I
I'm
understand that. Go ahead, Vice Mayor.
I'm going to suggest that it would not be appropriate for me to try and say or do anything here. I think the right procedural thing to do is for John to go back, for Mr. Furtado to go back, talk with the city manager and say, this is what my commission wants to know about and is concerned about. What information or how should we approach this? What kind of response can we give them? And if it needs to rise to the level of council, if there's some discretion about what can be disclosed, then council can discuss what that would be and come back to the commission. Does that make sense to you, Mr. Furtado?
It does.
Good
It does.
answer.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. And I think, for the commissioners, we're looking at two things. I know that there is a frustration in terms of the clarity on what you get to know about the legal fees and what we are trying to achieve in the purchasing policy. So my best effort is trying to get those two aligned and maybe, we can talk about how we can do that.
I think we're stuck with that. I mean, just from a Brown Act and disclosure standpoint, we've been through this horse before with the same answer.
And let me point out the obvious, and that is when there is an end to a case, the terms are publicly disclosed.
Have to be, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Which is not true in private industry necessarily.
Not at all.
No, totally different. Yeah, that's right.
No,
It's just
non-disclosure.
If you needed an example for how government and industry are different, there
yeah,
you
this
go.
is a good one.
That I think is a great one. And I appreciate you all giving me a good education in that.
We move on.
Well, actually, the line in the middle of the page below the table where the procurement of legal services of any value amount must be approved at the city council level, which is being stricken, are we taking a position that should be crossed out, that the legal services should be approved at the city council level?
Looks like it.
Yeah, I think my pushback, Martha, is just that it's a bucket and it's a bucket for a year. And what I think's inappropriate, and look, if the new city manager and John, God bless him, can manage these cases to a productive resolution and then manage the city's risk management such that, and you'll always have plaintiffs you can't account for, but manage this back where it bears some resemblance to historic experience, then I probably wouldn't care. If left to my own devices, even if you wanted to do this, I'd say then this ought to be budgeted, semi-annually or quarterly. I mean, my sensitivity on this is, and I forget the number, Martha, you may remember, or Gary, I want to say it's $3.5 million for the upcoming year. And what I don't like about this is go spend $3.5 million to manage these cases, but we're not going to hear from you until you blow through it. That's what I think is inappropriate.
Yes.
I mean, just to jump to the conclusion, and if I'm overreacting, then that's fine, but that's what I read here.
I don't think you are at all overreacting.
I'm agreeing with you, Tony. So
Yep.
this section needs to be looked at again.
Okay, doke. All right, John, back to you. Where do you go next?
So in terms of this same paragraph, right, if we didn't have this in the purchasing policy, then those individual cases would need to go to council for approval. So let's say we were paying June $120,000 for a settlement. That would have to be agendized and go through council for payment because it doesn't meet the thresholds. And that's when it becomes public knowledge, and we anticipate the building of the history for attorneys to see how much we are paying out, which was kind of what we were trying to avoid. I understand the other side of your frustration in terms of how
But,
that
but
might
John, let me
impact.
stop you there, right? If you manage the cases to unattractive settlements, you get the same thing going in the other direction. So you're not immediately selling me that by making the larger settlements public, everybody's going to race to Los Altos to look to bring a case. If you manage the cases effectively, so and I'm in that business. That argument's not working for me unless you don't like your settlement history. And I've got plenty of clients who litigate stuff hard and settle it low to send the same message. The second point I'd make is the notion that the plaintiffs bar community doesn't talk to each other, doesn't know roughly what these cases settle for, I think is fanciful. Yeah. And I would push back that that's really the right thing to be worried about.
Yeah. So the message that you want me to discuss with the city manager would probably be that you want to be better informed on these cases to have this on the purchasing policy, or you are not at all comfortable with having this on the purchasing policy?
All right, hearing silence.
Yep.
But my urging is you go back to the city manager and say, the request that the Financial Commission get on board with giving you an annual bucket with which to manage the cases without further necessary oversight is a no sale at this current level of spend. So we're flexible for other things you would do, but a multi-million-dollar bucket to spend as you see fit, and I mean to say it just that crisply, is a no sale.
Yeah.
Okay.
I agree.
Okay.
But we're flexible. I mean, I'm not trying to tell him how to do his job. I'm just telling him that doing it this way isn't going to get us on board.
Face it with a history that we've had. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, he manages, God bless him, he manages this back down, and this is $1.5 million a year to manage all the risks that rise to this level, except for a crazy case that everybody comes together and decides you have to fight because the plaintiff's crazy. Then, that's
different.
That's great. We're just coming off a bad experience, and every assurance that the cases load is going to be managed back and the city's behavior is going to be brought back so as not to create this habit, John, of just, bringing a knife to a gunfight and picking fights with people that you can't win. Yeah. That's what we're uncomfortable with.
Yep.
I understand. And I'll have that discussion with him, and I'll get back on the next meeting.
Good.
And we're otherwise really reasonable people. So let's get going.
Yeah.
So any other page that we wanted to look at?
So I guess I was looking at page 20.
Page 20.
And you put in the paragraph here about whether you decide to adopt the CUCCA or not.
Right.
Does that really, if you haven't made that decision, why do you discuss it here?
So we put this in here because we are trying to get the purchasing policy approved, and then we wouldn't have to revisit the document when we adopt the uniform code, because the uniform code would have its own document, but it would be, we would have the reference within our current purchasing policy, rather than revising it again at that point.
Makes sense.
Okay. And then my last thought was, as you go through the glossary starting on page 20, somebody ought to go through the document again and look at all the places where you've defined terms. For example, PSA is one that's not here, for example, which was defined, and there's a one about the shared purchasing among other government entities, CTO or whatever that was. That's not here also. So I think just do a review and figure out what's missing here.
Okay, we can do that.
Okay.
Was there anything else on this document?
No, I think I had just one question for you, and that is that obviously ethics around purchasing are incredibly important. So the ethical guidelines that you've added at the beginning are very nice. The question I would have is, did you lift these from some other document? Do we run a risk that there is a larger group of ethical guidelines that people should be signing up for, that this is a subset of, and maybe won't be maintained as well as the main ethics documents, ethics training that the company that the city goes through?
No, so the Code of Ethics is pretty vast. These are specifically related to purchasing and
Okay.
are defined by GFOA.
Okay,
Which is
I'm,
the
I'm,
government
I'm fine with them. I
financial
just don't want them to be out of date with other
Awesome,
documents.
I understand.
I have one last question. If should land for parks be included in this?
Well, that's a good question, but this is designed primarily for regular operations to the most of it, and I would believe something like land would be a separate discussion itself, right? And then
Is there a procedure for land purchases?
I do not see one here, but we can certainly incorporate something if that's the desire of this.
Well, we've got all these pages for credit cards, and one of the things that was brought up in a meeting over the summer is nobody could remember the last time we bought land for parks. Perhaps it would be nice if we had some sort of procedure of how that could occur.
I can certainly raise that.
Okay.
John, do you have any sense of how often petty cash is used anymore?
It is used, it is infrequently used, I would say, but it does get used sometimes if, a gas station doesn't work, then you go and pump gas at a gas station for a police car that's on patrol, and then they want cash immediately rather than waiting for a check. Or somebody pays a parking ticket somewhere, to park in a conference. It's rare, but it does happen.
That does invite a question that came to mind. I don't know if this violates any ethics laws, but it would be nice if we had something that said that if all things were equal, we'd favor Los Altos businesses, say for fuel and things like that.
Yeah, we could do something like that.
I mean, as long as we don't violate any laws or anything, I think we all want to help the hometown folks.
That's as long as we don't have a federal grant involved, and that will be the problem. If you have federal grants involved, you can't. That's number one rule. You have to be equal to everybody, not just for City of Los Altos.
Okay.
Without it, I think it will be fine.
Good point.
Okay, good.
Yeah, and in terms of any federal grants, we have a paragraph in here that we should be following federal grant procedures based on the grant document. Any other comments on this before I stop sharing the screen?
No.
I'm done.
Okay, so would you like to take a vote on this? I think the vote would be with the amendments that have been proposed, and I think you do not want the legal section to change from what it was before, if I understand correctly.
On the latter, I don't think that's what we're saying. I mean, I think if the city manager wants some more flexibility, I'm not a wooden no on that every nickel's got to go to the council every time.
Okay.
I mean, everybody else weigh in. I just said turning that into an annual bucket is the pushback here. So I don't know what other problems you guys are trying to solve in terms of council workload, repetition of going to the council, and efficiency of managing the city. So I'm not wooden on all of those. I just am uncomfortable. I mean, I'll bet you that's the single largest bucket in the budget that doesn't have any sub control over it if you do it that way. I mean, where else is there a go spend $3.5 million line in the budget, then you're all done.
Right. That's that discretionary.
Yeah.
John, I think we wanted to see another draft. At least I feel as though we gave enough suggestions and enough questions on some of the things that were rewritten that we'd like to see where your redraft is before it goes to council.
Okay. And in terms of, just to be clear on the legal fees, you're kind of looking at what would be projected in the year, more clarity on that, right? But if it is,
we are looking for something that says within the Brown Act, how can the Financial Commission understand better the details of the legal spending?
Okay.
Also, Tony brought up some interesting ideas, and I think we need to listen carefully to those since he's in the business.
Okay.
Okay, so I have good feedback on that. I'll work on a new draft. I'll talk to the city manager and see what we come up with on this.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay, so should we move to the second item, which would be
Third
Yeah.
item.
So, and I've got a 7:15 hard stop. So if you're going to get done before then, that's fine. Otherwise, I'm happy for you guys to move the minutes to get that done.
the minutes of the prior meeting.
Yes.
Okay, so do you have any comments on those, or should we move to?
Move that we approve them.
Second.
I'll do the roll on that.
Sure.
Commissioner Callback,
Aye.
Commissioner Richmond,
Yes.
Commissioner Frey,
Yes.
Commissioner Claris,
Yes.
Commissioner McClatchy,
Yes.
and Commissioner Whipple.
So I wasn't a commissioner when this happened, but I was there, and I think these fairly represent. So I guess I'm yes if I'm allowed to vote yes.
Yes, you are.
I
Okay.
believe you are.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0 with chair absent. And I'll move on to the next item, which would be a financial system overview. Now, what I'm going to try to explain here is mine and June's initial understanding of the system in place. And if these slides don't move, okay. So can you see my screen right now?
No, not yet.
Oh, so you cannot see my screen.
No, no sharing.
Okay. I'm gonna go back.
There you go.
And you can see.
There you are.
Okay. And you do see it, correct?
Yep.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So this financial system that we use, I think most of you are aware, it's called Central Square. I'm going to kind of run through, and I hope these slides translate because I have two monitors here and it doesn't seem to move. So that's not working. I'm going to stop the share. And I'm going to keep it. And you can now see the Los Altos current business map. Is that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So we currently use Central Square, and I kind of wanted to give you an overview and insight onto how the current process map works in Los Altos. We've got the financial system here, which we'll talk about the cost later, which is at the center of all these other internal business processes. And none of these are actually integrated to each other. So when it comes to the financial system, what we do here is purely, because most of you are into finance, you would know, is pure accounting, recording of transactions. Now, ideally, what business lines do we have? We've got business licenses, which we were using Trackit, or we still use Trackit software. This software has not been working well. In fact, there is a settlement that has just been completed with the company where they're going to release us from this software. So we're retiring this business license software. And I have been looking at solutions that would be stronger than what we have currently, that would allow us to be able to do most of our business license activity online and stop having too many people come into City Hall. So that's as far as business license is concerned. But even when this system is running, we still need to download data from this system and do an upload into our financial system here. The bigger piece is the payroll and human resources. This is a completely outsourced function to ADP. We use the ADP system to process our payroll, to process our benefits and everything else. And we do pay a lot of money for it. We pay $120,000 a year to manage that. Again, all that data needs to be taken out of ADP, converted into some kind of manageable format, and then uploaded into our financial system. We also lose track of who the person is that's charging to a certain account, etc. So there's a lot of issues with business analytics there. On the other side, we have permitting and recreation activities, which are in most cities specialized software. So they wouldn't be really part of your ERP. Some ERPs do have them, but they're so specialized that it sometimes makes sense that they are detached and then either integrated by API or integrated by some kind of upload download to your financial system. And that goes to the recreation activities as well. On the far side, and this is where critical time is spent by staff, is on the reporting and analytics side. We use multiple systems, so we have to pull analytics from the HR system here, which is ADP, or we have to go to business licenses and each of these individual systems to pull data. And that takes a lot of staff time. We also don't have a lot of built-in reports within the financial system that would be generated by that. So we end up using consultants and other audit firms. We pay anywhere from $30,000 to the $200,000 is more in terms of when there was a lack of staff, there was no director, there was no finance manager, and that's been the average over the last 3-4 years because we've had so much turnover. So analytics is pretty weak. The operating and capital budgets are completely done in Excel, which again involves tons of staff time and is not, again, integrated with the financial system. So that's pretty much an overview of what Los Altos does and how it does it. And then I just want to touch upon how it should be. What a real enterprise solution should have is you should have your finance module integrated with your HR and payroll, because you buy stuff in procurement, it flows into your finance system. You process payroll and HR, it seamlessly should flow into your finance system as well. And then budgeting, 70% to 75% of your annual budget is personnel and payroll. So having payroll within the same system makes budgeting seamless and can be done within the system as well. And these are the various modules, and I'm sure all of you are well familiar with what these mean and how they all should be integrated. So moving on to what I feel should be an enterprise resource planning, what does it do? We should be able to have our data in one place as far as possible. It saves us money, gives us better information, and timely information. I know part of the commission's beef was that they were not getting financial information in time, and it's purely understandable because the current systems are so antiquated that I think it would take months before they can actually get everything into the system to produce a report, and then you already feel you're 3 or 4 months back. So what are the benefits of having a system that's integrated? You can replace a lot of the legacy systems. As I showed here on this slide, just these 3 pieces cost us over $200,000. In terms of everything, we pay over $250,000 to almost $300,000 in annual subscription fees. I'm not talking about the fees that we pay to implement these systems. Those are sunk costs, and we can't do anything about that. So the information becomes more reliable. We get better dashboards, better reporting. Quarterly reports become very easy because all your data is centralized in one place for the most part. And just moving on quickly, because I know one of the members has to leave, what are the tools we can benefit from? We can have good reporting. We can summarize reports at the fingertips. A lot of these budgets, the systems work with the budget modules integrated in the system, so people would enter details within the budget system that would then help somebody coming in new to actually read and see what happened. And finally, just these were the views I had with a little less than a month at the job, and I would like to also have June kind of speak to what she has seen and what she would kind of have to comment on.
Yes, I totally agree with John was pointed out, and I also want to add it on. The integrated system also is labor intensive. For have upgraded financial system actually save a lot of staff time, which staff time some more productive activities instead just example like we have a business license renew and currently process actually the system cannot send a renew notice. We have to download the data of the system for the address and then put in on the Word document, do a mail merge, and then we convert to PDF, and then we send out to outsource to somebody else, and then to pay them $10,000. So they will actually send to whoever how many the business license owners. So in that way, so this is a very, system can do that automatically, should be. Instead of we're doing like old-fashioned way, I'm not saying like in 2000, that's probably in the 80s we were doing. So that's a more like labor intensive, and then that labor time can actually use for better things.
And ERP systems are you looking at?
And just to wrap up before we get into that discussion, I'm also saying that because of all these pieces being so widely apart and having so many manual processes, I am not comfortable with internal controls. I am a strong believer of internal controls. I like to have preventive controls than detective controls. This system cannot provide us that. Data integrity is another issue that I have. And then going to the question of what systems can we look at, there are a few choices out there. There are not too many systems in government specialized accounting. There are a few probably cost a little more in terms of initial cost that we need to implement and have them on board, but I'm pretty confident that the annual cost that we pay right now, which is closer to $200,000, would be cut by at least half with a new implementation. It could be painful, it takes time, but if the commission is willing to consider or discuss this topic, we can go out and look at what is out there in the market.
So
We have worked with
I'm a,
different systems.
John, I hate to cut you off, but I'm a little bit confused. I thought that the city has just purchased a new ERP system and was implementing the system.
You are correct. What they did was they didn't actually purchase a new system. They had an old system, a very, very old system that was bought off by another company that did a minor update to that system.
Mm-hmm.
So according to what staff tell me, it is a big improvement from what they had in the past.
Mm-hmm.
But it was like going from DOS to Windows 3.0. but we are currently talking about being in XP and Windows 10. So it is still light years behind. I've talked to IT. IT says that because this system has been bought and sold, I think around 3 times in the last 2 years, and they're not getting good support in terms of implementation. The company has a few modules that could be used, but my opinion is that it is not what would do good to Los Altos in the long term.
That's really big information. I mean, I've been on the commission for 5 going on 6 years, and Sharif had led us to believe that the upgrade of the, I think it was Superior, is that what it is?
It was Superior that was now purchased by Central Square and is now called Central Square, yes.
Okay, so this is sort of big news.
Martha, I'm with you. I thought we were in the latest, Windows 13 kind of realm.
Yeah, it was in the cloud,
and it cost us so much to change and transfer, but we're going to be in the next generation. It's disappointing.
June, what generation do you think this current system is in your experience?
I would say it's the first generation. Well, it's really advanced on the workflow. That's a good part of the system, the workflow wise. Everybody actually, the one task moved to one another. The workflow really improved a lot efficiency wise. But however, on the reporting side, that's where we have a problem. The data is all in there. You can't, but it's everywhere. So we cannot put, like example, I want to print a trial balance. My trial balance, I only want to see the revenue side. There's no report for that. I only want to see expense side for one fund, maybe general fund, or maybe special revenue fund, just for one fund. There is no one report actually can specific to print out just the information. Also, that's a very standard accounting report. Also, I just wanted for this funds with every detailed trial balance. This is like a very standard report, and then the system won't be able to produce. That's me and John was struggling for last month to validate the data, to check on the integrity of the data, which is very, very difficult with the current system.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Martha, sorry, this is an important topic. I wish I could hang out. Tonight I have a hard stop at 7:15, so I'm gonna have to excuse myself, but this sounds like a topic to be continued in any event.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thanks, Tony.
Thanks, everyone.
I'm looking back to
Thanks,
the report from June 11th, 2019, where we approved $146,000 to improve the system. So what we're basically saying is over the last year and a half, that really wasn't money well spent. That in fact, we should have really been looking at an entirely new system, is what you're concluding, which is just a big, okay.
You bring up very good points, Martha. I think we should talk to the folks who are still here and ask what has changed.
Well, that's, I think, to John and June are, what we're saying is there's been so much turnover.
Yeah.
I think that the people that perhaps were here were limping along and thought any improvement's a better improvement than what we have. They spent $146,000 on, I don't know what, and now new guard is here and they're saying it really wasn't worth it. You really need to throw this out and start over.
And it's not that it's not worth it. It was an improvement over what they had in the past, no doubt. Probably part of the problem is that the people who were predecessors to us have not seen what can be a good system, right? I've worked in several systems that are really, really powerful, from bigger cities to smaller cities. And I've also seen cities that do this hybrid, but then it takes a lot of staff time. Your staff resources will be absorbed. Data integrity is a big issue, especially imagine doing a complete budget in Excel. How accurate would you think that could be? It's usually the final touches that you do in Excel, your analytics, once you pull reliable data from the system, which is light years away in the way I see it in the current system. We could rejig everything, even the chart of accounts and the way the system is designed is in terms of being only the general fund. But as we move forward, we are looking more in terms of how we distribute costs more evenly, how we reach across other funds. Is the sewer fund paying its fair share, and that kind of stuff. Those kind of allocations would not be technically possible in this system unless it's reorganized. And then we are fine with reorganizing it, but finance staff as well as IT staff keep talking about issues they are having with the company to respond to things that they have already requested for. And the inability to correct stuff, they do updates over the air and then break something else. So there's been a lot of not so happy news that I've been hearing. So I did talk to Gabe as well, and he kind of said, present this to the commission and look at whether they are open to looking at solutions that would save us money in the long term. We might have a bigger outflow in the beginning, but then process-wise, it would be better. You would have better reporting. You would be more accurate in your budgets and your data integrity.
So let me ask you, has Gabe experienced this through you enough to be 100% certain that you're on the right track? You're on a very early stage of a track of looking. So where does he stand on just looking?
I think Gabe has kind of felt that he couldn't get anything out or any good information since he joined in terms of the system.
Okay.
And he kind of validated what I'm saying in terms of my findings, and then June's findings as well, and then talking to IT as well on the problems. So, and that's why I didn't talk about how much we paid to implement something. That's sunk.
No, it's gone.
I'm looking
Sunk
at
cost.
even right now. How much do we pay every year for these processes? You know, having on the other side, we've got, besides the financial system, we've got ADP to process payroll. Now, government payroll is not as simple as private. You have benefits, you have a lot of moving pieces. There are a lot of errors that take place every week that takes HR time, that takes time for finance to correct, do retros, and all that function.
Let me interrupt a minute, John. Are you suggesting ADP is making a lot of mistakes?
So the way it is set up, when ADP does some updates, it also breaks things on the codes. So because government is very specific in the way you have certain codes, like some people have some benefits that can apply to CalPERS versus newer members have codes that would not apply to CalPERS. And ADP is not able to drive a lot of those. And then they do not pay the benefits for us. We still have to do all those benefit payments to CalPERS, to the other, to 401k and to the 457 plans. So it's a lot of moving pieces that are not within the financial system. While we do have a payroll team in-house, we have a HR team in-house that does most of this work, but doing it on somebody else's system.
So are you suggesting maybe you replace ADP? Is it that the existing platform cannot receive data, whether it's ADP or someone else?
Correct. So our recommendation is basically having a financial system that has payroll, budget, procurement, and finances integrated together. So it's one system. So you process everything once. When you process payroll, you can make your payments and your financial system is updated at the same time. And then your reporting is also updated at the same time versus having to do.
Talk to our current software vendor about why this integration doesn't exist on their platform?
Between ADP and financial enterprise?
Correct. I mean, ADP is, I'm not sure if they're the largest, but they're certainly one of the largest payrolls. In my company, I've used them for close to 30 years. I've never seen them make an error. When we've been audited by the state, all they showed them is just all they asked for is the front of the ADP packet, and they just went home. I would be shocked if somebody who does enterprise software can't integrate with ADP. It just that dog doesn't seem to hunt in my world, but perhaps I don't know about government.
Yeah, and this system, I believe I have explored that with current staff about integration with ADP, and they said they couldn't do it. Am I right, June? Is that what?
Actually, the basic problem, I've been, City of Rio Vista, I work for as fire director, they use ADP. And the City of Willits, and I use them. I also introduced ADP because the pricing, also because the personnel cost. However, went through the process, I found out, even same as Los Altos right now, the one thing is the scheduling, the timesheet. The only example, they only can have one pay period, either Saturday through Sunday or Sunday to Saturday. So it's not that flexible. You only can choose one of them. With PD, that will be some sort, maybe a problem, because the PD is very different shift, different schedules, and maybe on different pay period, or that's one of the things. Fire, definitely that happens, but we don't have fire department here. Another thing is I have experienced the general ledger upload. That's the biggest problem now. Even right now, I think Bailey is writing some sort of a program patch, which we're not on it. We're just the user. And then ADP will dump to whatever that patch, and then they will spit out some sort of reconciliation, and then we can upload to our enterprise financial software. And then that is permanent cost. You're thinking we're paying ADP, now we have to pay at Bailey for that patch, whatever they wrote, because we don't own that. As of today, I can tell you, we don't have any payroll data since July in our financial system. That's why we can't even produce any valuable report to you guys or to anybody, because payroll is 65, 70% of the expenditures for the city. And we don't have any payroll data in our financial software since July.
That's very different than industry, because I can log on to ADP and I can download stuff in seconds.
Yeah.
Right. And just somehow in because we have so much of withholding, and we with the CalPERS side, and also different type of the withholding. Some reason ADP won't be able to produce the general ledger. That's part we can't even fix. And every time we say, okay, this is wrong, we need to fix this pay codes, we have to call the ADP and let them do at the back end. We can't even fix in our end. That's where delay happens, because if example like COVID, we have a new pay code for 80 hours for COVID sick leaves. So that's a new pay codes in there, additional sick leave employee get. But for tracking that, we had to ask ADP to, hey, can you set up this payroll? Is it personable? Is it not personable? All sorts of things. We can't even set up that. ADP.
But ADP can do job cost.
Yeah.
Job
So-
cost.
Hey, let's not get into minutia.
Martha, can
is
I
great.
just suggest I'm convinced that we ought to look around. I would suggest we send John and June and whoever else out, look at the options, come back with recommendations. I mean, I don't think we should get into there's a 3 or 4 really experienced guys at doing this. And I don't want them to design the Los Altos system. I want them to critique what John and June come back with, in my mind.
Fair, very fair, Gary.
Yeah.
And I would add the caution that if you come back with just the systems you've worked with, the last time you were in a municipality, that would just look like
I agree.
blow everything up
No.
here and bring back everything you had before.
Yeah.
So just to touch upon that, I worked with 3 of the top systems on the market. So either one could work. And I think there would be just 3 or 4 that would fit the bill and then it depends on cost as well. So I'm certainly able to fix systems if I know that they can be supported. So if, for example, Central Square can work with us, we can do it, but that's not what I'm hearing from the current finance team, nor the IT. So that's scary to me. It's certainly not that I'm looking for something that I'm familiar with. I'm used to adapting very well to any other kind of system, and I would be very happy to use this system if I am confident it can work.
I think your slides, showing a nice integrated system are so important, and they're so doable. And I'm just shocked that the upgrade that Sharif had wanted to do didn't get us there. I know it probably got us a little bit further in terms of having a system that was more manageable. He was very constrained by the system pre-upgrade, but it sounds like he took a patch that isn't gonna take us very far. I mean, you'll have to use this system for the next year before you do another system implementation, before it gets through budget and people feel comfortable with it. So you're gonna have to use this for the next 6 months to a year, I would imagine. But I think it's I think we'd like to have you go out and do get some other or give us your suggestions for systems that you feel would suit the city of Los Altos.
Right, and the way we would potentially do that is we would write what our requirements are and send it out, as an RFP and see what comes back and bring those findings, once we identify what can work.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's good. And I'm also disappointed, Martha, I would have bet $100 to 1 that we had a fully integrated system.
Right,
Listening to the months of Sharif's sales pitch to us.
Well, everything John just said, Sharif said.
Yeah, but you see, I actually showed you the map of how it is right now.
You showed us a block diagram.
Yeah.
I would, if IT has an inside story as to why this system didn't make sense or was against their preferences, I'd like to bring them into the meeting.
Yeah.
And have them explain to us what went on.
Yeah.
Perhaps we could have the existing supplier of our current system come in and explain to us, and perhaps a representative from ADP can explain why those two can't talk. That would certainly help me understand the situation. And if we are going to look at any future system, security is huge. I mean, cities are getting ransomware all over the place. And if you go very integrated and someplace off a large company like ADP, we have to be very careful that we don't have issues.
I'm going to have to run out.
Yeah, as am I.
I think the path is clear. I also agree. Cybersecurity today. I was on El Camino Hospital Board for 8 years and very much involved with cybersecurity. Hospitals and cities. Those are the two targets right now.
Absolutely.
So I'm much more. It's much more important to have cybersecurity than it is extra staff or something. So anyway, I got to leave. Thank you.
All right. Bye, Gary. So
Bye.
John, I think that we're looking forward to maybe next month's meeting where you can give us some suggestions for paths forward. Is there any way that you could share your slide deck with us? Could you send that to us in an email?
Oh, sure. You want the one for the financial system?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I can do that.
Also,
Yes,
John,
please.
I have another request. Could we get the data that we're going to review for the commission perhaps on the Monday as opposed to on the Thursday, so we have a few extra days to look at it? Just
Okay.
having the weekend isn't really sufficient. Usually for these types of packages, you get a whole week.
Yeah, because I was told 72 hours, but I'll try to cut that shorter. It also has to go through an internal review, so we'll do our best.
We appreciate it.
And just before we conclude, any staff announcements?
Mr. Furtado,
Yes.
I note that there have been some things over in the chat. Normally we have disabled chat with commission meetings because anything that's in chat really needs to be on the public record.
Okay.
So would you be sure that you have captured what is in the chat? I'm not sure on a propriety basis what we need to do with it in terms of disclosing it or making it available or whatever. You'll need to check with the city manager on that.
Okay.
But had I noticed it earlier, which I hadn't, I was very focused on the conversation. I didn't realize there was any chat going on, or I would have intervened earlier. I'm sorry.
Okay, I'll add it to the recording for today's meeting.
Yeah, that's however it is one does that. And then I think we need to verify. I think that the standard procedure is supposed to be that chat is disabled during commission meetings.
Okay.
Thanks.
Just quickly touching upon staff announcements. In the last meeting, we talked about the PERS reserve. I have done some work on that, and I will be making recommendations soon after I crunch all the numbers. And then I would also want to ask this committee if there is interest in doing the same thing with the OPEB reserve that we have of 1.5 million. Because that is again discounted at 6.5% and we are around 52% funded on our plan. With this 1.5 going into the trust, we could reach 95 to 100%.
Over what period of time?
Straight away.
Oh.
As soon as we put it in.
Oh.
Yeah, I think you need to give us a proposal. But yeah, I think we're getting terrible interest rates these days with what, 85 points or something on invested capital.
So I could work on that.
Propose something. Yeah.
For the next meeting, and we could put out a recommendation. Yeah.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, and any other parting comments? I know everyone's tired today.
Well, I'm going off to my next meeting, so yeah. Okay. Are we done for this evening?
We are adjourned, I believe.
I think so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you,
all.
June. Nice
All right.
meeting you, June.
Thank you, everybody. Nice to meet both of you.
Nice meeting you.
Bye-bye.